Hello, my name is Faith Gernhardt. I'm a fiber arts enthusiast. Now that I've made Martha Snowflake, I want to do a little embellishing. So I can always do what our artist did, and that is place the snowflake over a Christmas ball, like that. That's quite lovely. Another thing that I can do, and I think I'm going to do it with these two smaller ones, is I'm going to stiffen them with glue and water mixed and put some sparkles on it. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to use some wax paper. Then I'm going to mix some tacky glue and water, about 50-50 there. And I'm going to use some silver crystal glitter glue. Mix that in about the same amount as I did with water and tacky glue. Mix that all up. Okay, now we take our snowflake, work it around in there. Rub that glue off of it. Just stick in there real good, thank you. Don't need it to have a whole lot of glue on it, especially in the holes. Now let's see how we're doing. Resin off. And then lay it on the waxed paper. That glitter glue just doesn't do much, does it? I want to absorb it because I don't want the glue to actually make windows in there. There we go. Oh yeah, it does glitter. It's just a very subtle, nice glitter, and the glue will make that nice and stiff to make it just an ornament in and of itself. So I had thought about making a garland with this small one, but then my daughter-in-law said, you know, they would make lovely earrings. So I did. I made a second one. And then my grandson's girlfriend said, you know, if you put it in resin, that'll protect that material. So that's what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to put it in resin. And I have purchased a small quantity of 1-to-1 resin. We find a space. That'll allow any of that to drip. And then it'll be free for me to just set aside at normal room temperatures for about 24 hours. And then we'll have earrings that are protected from dust, dirt, and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Earrings she made.
Another thing that I can do to ornament the snowflake is to add beads. Here I've added some pretty blue beads. I like that. And it can be hung over. What if I use the joining picots as well as the decorative picots? That's looking pretty neat. I'm not sure at all that I like the larger beads on the outside, though. So here's a size 20 thread with the same size beads all the way. I think I really like that idea. Go over a small thing. And then what about putting a charm on the side? And I put this one over a Christmas ball. the neck on that ball is quite large. And with the charms, in this video, I'm going to show you the two methods I used of adding beads as part of a picot and making a bar out of the joining picot. So we will put those aside. And to show you how to do that, I'm just going to use some large cord again. And when you're planning on what you're going to put on, you need to put on the number of beads you need. If, as in this case, where I used both round and triangular beads, then you need to be quite exact as to which beads you put on in which order. You will actually put the beads on last on, first off. So the first bead you put on your thread is the last bead you'll use. So if you're using all the same kind of beads as in this case, then it's just a case of making sure you have enough beads. For each time you make a ring, you have to have the exact number for that ring. You can always have more beads than you need at the end when they're all the same size. When you're using different kinds of beads, then you need to make absolutely sure that what you put on your yarn or thread is exactly what you're going to use. So, to put a bead on a picot, as part of a picot, you put the bead on the yarn before you tat. So now the bead is ready. And if you're doing this on a ring, it has to be part of the ring. I'm just going to go a little ways and put it on. I'll make a stitch, a double stitch, and then a picot. You bring the bead up, and the bead is actually part of the picot. And you see, there's your bead. That is part of your picot. I'm going to make the bead go across the picot as a bar. I make my stitches up to the point of making the picot. So I'm just going to do one. I use something to help me pull my pattern thread through the bead. Now I work my picot down and my bead down, and because I'm going to be using either something else here that's going to hold that because it's going to be a bar, I still leave my helper in the picot, and then I make the stitch. And then you see my picot becomes a bar. Now, let's see what it looks like using beads on regular thread. What you will need for this project, your findings, charms, and jump rings to attach the charms, your beads, 2 pair of toothless needle nose pliers. You can buy those, if you don't already have them, at just about any craft supply place. A beading needle. The beading needle that I like is the Bead-A-Lawn long-eyed needle. And I found that I can cut that needle in half, and it makes a really great tool for getting that thread up and through the bead. And you'll need 13 helper loops. These are just loops of thread. I've chosen to use a contrasting color with an overhand knot at the end. Then you'll also need your thread and scissors. Any bead that is going to be part of a picot needs to be on the thread before you start making that picot. Whether it's a chain or a ring, the bead needs to be on the thread before you start tatting. So I'll use my bead-along needle, pull the bead on, and I'm going to make a chain, a ring that includes a picot with a ring bead in it. So in that case, the bead has to be where it can become part of that picot, which means it has to be in the ring. So I'll make a double stitch. Then I'll bring my bead around and it becomes part of the picot that I'm going to make right now. And see, there's the bead as part of the picot. Now let me make a few more double stitches and I'll make a barred picot with a bead. Now to make a barred picot, we don't put the bead in the picot, we put the bead over the picot. So you need something that's going to pull the picot through the bead. In this case, I'm using the cut bead-along needle. Thread the bead on, and I'm pulling the bead over the picot. Now, in order to keep it there, this is where those helper loops that I told you about as a part of your things, put the loop through the top of the picot to be, and then work the thread and the picot down up against the existing stitches. Bring that on down. See, as you pull it, that'll work the bead down, and there's your barred picot that the bead is over, and then you make your stitches. Trying this from a different angle so that you can see the process. To add a picot, a bead across a picot or a bar of a picot, we use the split needle, come around, put it on the bead, pull it up through the bead, and take it off, put it away, take our helper thread, and then work the bead and the thread down to the proper position. Okay, let's do that again. Now you work that thread and the bead down to the proper position, and then pull your helper thread out of the way, make your picot. We're bringing a bead around to make it part of a picot, and since this is a ring, it had to be on the thread and inside the ring. I'm going to go ahead and make this ring big enough to be a ring. And the next thing you're going to do is, when you go to join this barred picot, this is where this helper thread really comes in handy. So I'm going to make another ring out a ways. Oh, 2 double stitches. And at this point, I want to join back to that barred picot. Okay? So what I'm going to do is give myself plenty of working thread here in my existing ring or chain. Then I take my helper loop and pull a loop of my regular pattern thread through, and I'm going to pull that loop through that picot. Now this is not an easy task. If this were loose enough to make that an easy thing to do, then your bead would slide back and forth across that bar. So you want that bar to be just the length of the bead, just barely more than the bead. Now you've pulled a loop through the picot, which is what you normally do. And then you come up from behind and close your loop. And you've joined and made a bar between your 2 elements. Now joining from this angle, let's see if that helps a little bit. Got to have enough room. So I take my helper thread and loop it over my pattern thread. Then I pull the helper thread through and force that loop through. That could take some work. There we go. I'll put my hand back in. And now we have the loop, and we bring the picot up for the first half of the picot. I'm going to start with round 1, and on round 1 I'll be placing beads on the picots that are at the top. That's 6 of them. And I'll be placing beads on these joining picots, but I don't have to put them on my thread ahead. I do have to put the ones that are going to go part of the picot. I'm going to use the blue, so I'll have the pretty crystals against blue this time instead of red. And around the collar I will use the pyramid beads, so I need 6 of those. And I'm going to set aside 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the joins, and 12, which is 18, and that is what I'm going to need to complete round 1. I'm going to leave 1 up here for the first ring, and then unwind far enough that I'm sure they're not going to be involved, and wind back. And now, because that bead's going in a picot that's in a ring, it has to be in the ring before you make the picot. You have to have as many beads in the ring as you're going to use on that ring. The next picot is a joining picot, and each picot that's a joining picot, I'm going to make a bar. So I'm going to take my split beadle-on needle, put it around the thread, and use it to work the picot through. Then I'll take one of my helper loops, put it through the loop, hold it as I work the picot and the bead down into position. Then I make my stitch. 1, 2, and see, now I've got a picot on a bar. Now here's something that I discovered, is if I pull this my helper through loop down to my knot, it makes it much harder for me to accidentally pull that loop out and make this disappear, and then the bead's going to come off the bar, and I've got a fiddly job to get it back in place. So that'll hold that until I'm ready to join. That's 1, 2. Bring up the bead that's going to be part of my picot. Make the picot right around it. 1, 2. Got another joining picot, and each joining picot is going to be a bar. So I take out my split beetle on needle. Bring that up through. I still have to watch to make sure I don't twist in the picot. Hold that helper thread. Work the picot and bead together up next to the work. Make the stitch. And pull the loop out so that the knot is held at the end. So these loop threads are down here. They're easy to, I can work them, I can pull them out of my way as I'm working, and I don't have to worry about pulling them out of that barred picot. So that's 1, 2, picot 1, 2, and close the ring. Reverse my work. And now I'm going to do the chain, and I'll have 2 barred picots on that chain. Pull it up snug. Reverse the work. One, 2, picot, 1, 2. Now for the join on a barred picot. This is where this helper loop really comes in, because we can't really take a crochet hook through here. So we use the helper loop. Bring my helper thread. Make a loop. Pull that through. Now I have the loop as if I had done a regular picot. Coming up from the bottom. Complete it. Now we're going to join to the first ring. Before I join, I'm going to make sure that everything is straight. I don't have a twist in there with all the throwing around I was doing. Yep, that's a nice straight. Really nice and flat. Pull that loop through. It's trying to twist really badly. There we go. No twisting it. Join. 1, 2, picot, 1, 2, close the ring, reverse our work, and we make the last chain. 3, 4, that's the last of round 1. Cut the threads, give myself plenty of length. There's a tie. I need to get my threads that need to be tied. Over left, pull it in nice and snug. Left over right with an extra twist. Pull that nice and tight. Now, I'm going to be spending some time planning the second round. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these. That way I can cut them with all the helper threads. Put them aside and let that dry for about an hour while I'm planning my bead placement for the second round. As we're planning round 2, we have several things to think about. For one, I'm planning to put multiple kinds of beads on, so I have to know exactly how many beads go on which thread and in which order. If I were going to use all the same kinds of beads, then I'd only need to worry about how many beads to put on each thread. And if they're all the same exactly, just put on more than enough, because you can always take them off at the end when you've got those leftover threads. If I were just dealing with this pattern and I hadn't already worked my 2 threads in different colors, then I would have to look at exactly what's happening and figure out where each thread is. But having worked it in 2 colors, it makes it really easy to see that I have an inner ring and an outer rings on this round. The inner rings have joining picots, which means I do not put the beads on the thread anyway. The outer rings, and you notice this arch is an outer ring because we reversed our work here, and we reversed our work here. The outer rings do have decorative picots onto which I'm going to place beads, and I'm going to be changing which beads go where. So for the inner ring, I don't even have to worry about any beads at all. The thread that's going to be the inner ring does not have any picots that are going to have the bead as part of the picot. So now, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to alternate on these chains round beads and angled beads. So I'm just going to go around and go angle, round, angle, round, angle, round, angle, round. On each of these larger outer rings, I'm going to put 2 rounds on either side. I'm going to put an angled and a charm. So that means these are going to be bar picots. I won't have the bead on the ring itself. I will have it aside to put on as I make the picot. So I'm going to make my round, 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 angled with a charm. Won't go on the thread. Round, round. The other thing to think about when you're starting this is that you are going to put the beads on first on, last off. So this will be my last bead that I put on. That means that that will be the first bead because I'll be tatting in this direction. We'll be going counterclockwise as a righty. As a lefty, my tatting would be going clockwise. So you'd be doing exactly the opposite of what I'm doing. And so our last bead is going to be this bead right here. And we're going to be going this direction as we fill in the beads. And because they are in a specific order, it's not just simply a case of counting. It is making sure that I have the right beads in the right place. So this first ring or last ring will have 4 rounds. The angled will not be on the thread because it'll be barred in order to put on the charm. So I need 4 rounds. Okay, now check and make sure we have what we're supposed to have. 4 round angle, wrangle, 4 angle, round angle, 4 angle, round angle. Very good. And as I start with this, I'm going to have angle, round angle. So I will move the rest of these down the thread a good ways. And my first use is going to be here, so it won't be a ring. I can put them down. And I start with my first ring. That is well dried, so I can snip them off. Be careful not to cut anything that I don't want cut. So ready? I'm going to need one for here, but when I remove that one I can use it, so that's fine. I'm ready to start. Six. Put my bar on. Work that picot up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Join. Do the first picot of any chain on round 1. One, 2, 3, 4, 6. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Close the ring. Okay. Reverse the work. Bring up the beads for the first chain. Round. One, 2, 3, 4. Angle. 1. Reverse. 6. Join to the previous ring. 5, 6. Join to the next picot on the chain. 5, 6. Joining picot so it gets around a bar of round. 5, 6. Close the ring. 'Do not reverse. 1, 8. Reverse. Now bring up 4 rounds. I need that yarn space. Put this down farther. And 8. First picot. 3. Second picot. 3, angled on a bar so that we can add a charm. What happened is that tried to twist, so I had to make sure that I had all of my patterns to the outside. One, ready for the next picot. One, ready for the 5th picot. One, 8. Now I'm going to close the ring. Again, double check, make sure nothing's twisted. All of the tops of the knots are facing out. Nice and snug. Reverse our work. Pull that in nice and snug. That fills in or closes that little bit of a gap we had. 2, 8. Do not reverse work. So the pattern stays pattern. Those 2 chains are about the same length. Okay, 1.5. 2, 3, 4. Pull up the next bead. 1. If you're wondering why I'm keeping my hand closed, I'm supporting the existing work because it is getting heavy and it will pull stitches at the end, tightening them up and making for a gap. Okay, now when I reverse my work, I want to check for any twisting, and I don't know if you can see it, but this is a bit of twisting that's going on right here. So I'm going to pull that, and you can see that the top of the stitch actually is trying to spiral around. So we just twist it until that is not happening anymore. We pull up the chain snug. 5, 6, everything's okay with the ring. Close it. Reverse the work. You know, on this last chain element, I think I'm going to try out leaving the beads down on the string and see how that works out, rather than trying to have them up near my fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, pull a bead up. I think that's easier than trying to deal with those beads. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pull a bead up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Reverse the work. Check the status of the chain. Make sure it's untwisted. And we're making the last ring, which means we're joining back to the first ring. Six. And we join to the first picot of the first ring. Six. Make sure nothing is twisted. Close the ring. Do not reverse the work. That ring wants to come open. There we go, that's better. Eight. Reverse the work. My last 4 beads. What I've discovered while working is if I wrap some extra thread around my little finger, those beads don't migrate up into the work and give me as much trouble. 1, 8, bring up the first bead, 1, 2, 3, bring up the second, 3, bring up the bead, 1, 8, make sure the ring is all in the correct direction. Reverse the work. 8, put it up snug, and give myself enough cutting space, put you away. And tie my threads. Okay, you're on the ring, you're on the chain. Go. Right over left. Pull it up just as snug as I can. Get out of the way, get out of the way, out of the way. Thank you. Right over left. Left over right twice. Nice and snug. Trim that off, but not too far because I have not tied. None. Okay, now I'm ready to put my charms on. 6 points. Okay. And to put my charms on, I'm going to need my charms, 6 of them. And I'm going to need 6 small jump rings. There's 6 jump rings. And I have here 2 jump rings that are larger than I would normally use. That's because I'm going to show you, quote, the proper way to take care of a jump ring. So you need your 2 pair of pliers that I mentioned earlier. If you don't have pliers that are toothless, then take tape and put it around, because the teeth on regular needle nose pliers will mar the surface of the jump ring. And you take your jump ring, the cut where the ring was made goes at 12 o'clock, 1 jump ring at 3 o'clock, 1 at 9 o'clock, and then you twist the jump ring open. You don't pull it open because that will actually deform the ring and make it no longer round. Then when you're finished with it, you twist it back in shape and sort of push them together to take care of that space between the cut. Again, holding the jump ring with the cut in the ring at 12 o'clock, pliers at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, twist the jump ring open. When you've attached it, then you twist it back closed again. So, I'll put those out of the way. I'll put the lid on this before I knock it over, or the cat visits and knocks it over. And we take our first jump ring, it's already twisted in that direction as part of the process of making the jump ring. Using your pliers to hold the jump ring, you put the jump ring in that loop at the end, then you can pull your helper thread out. Let's see, it hangs that way. And this is, we care about how this one goes on, so we put it on so that it will hang the way we want it to. Grab the 9 o'clock, twist the jump ring closed, and there we have our charm attached. And I'll attach the other 5 charms. A book I have on chainmail jewelry talks about in one of her tips to have extra rings, because every once in a while they'll flip out of the jaws of the pliers, never to be seen again, is the quote she used. Here we are. Now we are ready to glue. So I'm going to lay out my work. And glue. I'm going to glue this from both sides. And I'll show you why in just a moment. Turn it over. Put it aside to dry for an hour or so. And while that is drying, I wanted to show you a mishap problem. When I bought the Christmas balls for putting these snowflakes on, the only glass ones I could find had a big neck on them. So when I'm trying to put this one onto a ball, I'm pulling very, very hard, and I pulled it apart. So when this dries, I am not going to cut that thread until after I get it onto that Christmas ball, because it is a large neck. In this case, I am going to cut off the beads so that they can be reused in another project before I throw this away, because there's no way I can fix that problem in a reasonable amount of time. I do thank you for watching. Have a good day, and God bless.